What does it mean for you to be a journalist?
It's a commitment to human stories. I know I'm not I would say like a a political monster, you know? I'm not out here trying to get the big interviews with the big presidents and go through the dockets and find, I can do that. I enjoy doing that every now and then. I love an investigation. I love a good interview, but I have increasingly leaned into what my strength is and what I enjoy doing, which is connecting with people and sharing their stories as purely as I can, transmitting their experience as well as I can. So I think being a journalist for me is a commitment to the communities that need their stories told, and doing that in a way that is, serves the purpose of everyone. I don't think that a story should have an impact on the people who are the most vulnerable that is negative. And I really mean that. I don't think we should be distorting information at all, obviously. But I'm constantly asking myself, why am I doing this? Why am I going here? What does this mean? And if I feel like there's a little bit of, and this has gotten more fine-tuned with time, but when I can sense that there's something in there that feels a little bit, I don't want to say corrupted, but self-interested, I do the work to try and, kind of weed that out. Because I've experienced the harm of journalists coming into our country and serving themselves and getting that story and leaving us. Extracting. And I think that the moments where I've gone back to Sudan, we've been in a state of being discarded. When I moved back, when I graduated 10 years ago, it was barren. No one cared. No one was reporting on Sudan. We'd seceded from the South. Our president wasn't going anywhere. We were just kind of relegated to this doomed dictatorship, and no one was covering Sudan.
You were saying that when you went back in 2015, people would only, in the international sphere, people would only reference Sudan with regard to the genocide that had taken place in the early 2000s, which was devastating. But it was almost as if there was nothing else to say about this country.
What the Sudanese government got in terms of the genocide in the early 2000s was absolutely well-deserved. But for the people of Khartoum, they were being completely conflated with the government. When I moved back, it's actually the first story I pitched was of wrestlers from the Nuba Mountains training for the Olympics, and they...
In Tokyo.
Yeah, training for the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo. I actually worried what COVID did, if COVID derailed that. But it didn't matter because at the time it was this amazing goal that they were working towards. And their wrestling ring is in a neighborhood with a lot of displaced Nuba. And I would go on Saturdays and the energy was incredible. It was amazing. And I just kind of felt like, how can I report on what's happening in the Nuba Mountains and also celebrate what they're doing here? Why does it have to just be them in a state of like victimhood and helplessness and rebellion? Why can't it be both? Because they are occupants of Khartoum, they're residents of Khartoum. And why is Khartoum only the government and the state and the elite? So that was kind of a big gateway for me into really just trying to create an inclusive picture of what Sudan is that culminated in covering the revolution, because all of that kind of was out in the open and was coming out with such pride and such boldness. But I was really trying to get into these strands of the different threads in Khartoum and what makes Khartoum. And recently, actually, I was at the screening of a friend of mine's film called Khartoum. And, he films with 5 residents of Khartoum. And they are a diverse group of people. It's a woman from the Nuba Mountains, a tea lady who I actually met in Nairobi, and she was so beautiful. I took a portrait of her, and then she was in this film. 2 kids who we would consider street kids. a young man who's like your typical like savant Khartoumi guy who would be like a protester, rode his motorbike through the protests and like picked people up and helped them out, and a bureaucrat. And I just was so happy to see that, because that is what we were all trying to show at that time, like this renaissance of culture in Khartoum, 2016, 2015, that preceded the revolution, was that Khartoum is all of ours. And we need to tell each other stories, and we need to be a part of each other's stories, because this kind of segregation that had been so normalized is exactly how we end up in these kind of wars and how we end up being easy to govern and repress. And so it really shaped how I approach journalism, essentially. And now when I go to places that I've never been to before, I'm just trying to listen in and hear what wants to be given a stage that wants to come forth.